can take the training later on. So if you've done recording. And so once again, I'll welcome everybody to overview and the new METRANS website and the Drupal content management system. I'll start sharing my screen now. Everybody see my screen? I'm actually looking at the current METRANS website.
Yes.
Okay. So what we'll be talking about today is, as I said, I'll be giving you a tour of the site, which is a work in progress. We've completed a lot of the theming, meaning application of the design, and for the most part, we've completed implementation of the systems by which you would create a typical web page that also then specifically the theming and development work to support the ability to add a news item to the website or an event to the website. In further trainings, we'll talk about how we add new research projects or researchers and other types of content. Today, as I said, we'll be talking about basic pages, and I'll be introducing you to the Drupal content management system, introducing you to the basics of that. And we'll also be covering how to add pages to the menu system of the website using the Drupal content management system. So what I'd like to do, giving you the caveat about the fact that it's a work in progress, is show you the new site. So can everybody see this? This is the new home page.
I can see it.
And as you can see, we have a nice prominent header for the home page. Organizationally, you should recognize some of the components. Now, it's like I said, it's a work in progress, so the menu items and the menu structure is subject to change, although the 9 items you'll see across the top are pretty much set at this point, although menu items are never set in concrete. They're very easy to change. Much of the content from the existing site is in the process of being transferred or will be transferred. And so that content, let me just flip back to the existing site. So we have the current site has news and events. We have about the center. There's a new section on it for the METRANS Tier 1 UTC. It's education, research, outreach, resources. And so several of those menu items transfer directly. We go from about the center to about, and then we have research, education, outreach, resources, and then there's a new section that will be developed called giving and memberships. As you all know, I'm sure, there are actually 3 additional components to this site that are represented, and depending on the terminology, we seem to be going back and forth between entity and center, so I'm just going to refer to them as entity centers. We have the new, as the current site mentions, the METRANS Tier 1 UTC, which we're calling METRANS UTC on this site. So that has its own special section. MetroCrate, you're probably also familiar with, that has its own special section. And then there's the, Tier 2 UTC, where METRANS is participating in the Tier 1 UTC project that's being conducted by UC Davis, which is the National Center for Sustainable Transportation. Let me just really quickly show you those. And now, much of this content, excuse me? Hello?
If you could talk a little louder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I got my headphones on. I'm surprised that, hang on a second. Let me just check the volume on my microphone. So are people not hearing me well?
I can hear you loud.
Okay. All right. Well, yes.
This is Vicki. I just want to ask you, you were going to record this.
Yes, we are recording right now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So the content of this landing page is subject to change, but it's illustrative of what you'll typically find on the landing page for Jen's picture. Just a picture of Jen with the picture of hang on a second. I'm going to let some people know that they should not be touching the site right now. Okay, so we've identified that there are several main sections and sections of the website, and particularly the new ones identified, the entity centers, METRANS UTC, Metro Freight, and the National Center for Sustainable Transportation. Each section, each of those specific sections has, well, every section has its own submenu, but as we'll go into in a little more detail later, each of these entity centers also has their own news announcements and events, so that when I go to, for instance, METRANS UTC, the news and events I see in the right are specific to METRANS UTC. When I go to Metro Freight, similarly, news and events are specific to Metro Freight and National Center events. Okay, we don't currently have any data in there for National Center, but if there were, you would see news and events specific to that as well. So let's see. What I want to talk about is just the Drupal content management system very briefly. The existing site is supported with two technologies. One is the UI publish system, which provides some content via database. That content is mostly the research and researchers' information. And as you guys know from maintaining that site, a lot of it is done with Dreamweaver to produce static HTML pages. And one of the big differences between Drupal, the Drupal content management system, and websites historically, particularly websites that are created and maintained with Dreamweaver. As you know, with a Dreamweaver site, you typically have an association of pages to the URL for the page. So where for key personnel about the center for the current METRANS site, this file, keypersonnel.html, is generated with Dreamweaver, and the content is maintained with Dreamweaver. And you know specifically, that you're looking for that site when this file when you're maintaining the content for this page, and you know specifically that you have to upload this file to the live site when you want it to go live. That goes away with Drupal. With Drupal, all of the HTML and textual content is database resident, stored in a database, and Drupal dynamically generates the pages. So there are not, there's no one-to-one file association with what you see on the screen, and so there's no one-to-one file association between a web page and there's no subsequent or associated specific file for that. The URL for a web page is set to be generated dynamically based on the title of the page, although it can be changed to something more specific or different if you need that. Let's see. So we talked about the differences between Drupal and web technology historically. We talked about entity centers and how they're represented on the new site. What I want to do is introduce you to a couple of Drupal terms. There's a term that was used extensively. It's called content type, which means, if you flip the words around, it's a type of content. So a type of content would be, for instance, a news article or an event, which is a different type of content or content type. And we will have, like, a research project is a specific content type. A researcher is actually a specific content type because we need to identify specific researchers and associate them with specific projects. And as part of the site, of course, we have the Searchable Goods Movement Timeline database, which Tom O'Brien maintains, and that has its own content type as well. So we have timeline items which are recorded and displayed as a part of the Searchable Goods Movement Timeline database. So, having given you that overview, I'd like to show you how to log into the system and how to create and maintain content. So, we don't provide a login on the home page or on the site itself, and that's because we don't want the public to think that they can log in. If there were a public login, we would put it here. But so basically, it's a secret method, which is just you add a slash and the word user to the URL to get to the homepage log or to the main login for the site. And after the training is over, I will create accounts for everyone in Drupal. They'll receive an email to notify you that the account has been created, and the email will include a link that you can use to subsequently set your password for the site. But once your account has been established, you can log into the account. You're into Drupal by adding /user to the URL for the site. And I have an account called User Editor, which has the permissions and authorities that a typical METRANS content manager would have. So I use that to log in. And what that does is it takes me to a dashboard that is customized for maintenance of the METRANS website. And just to give you a quick overview, for convenience, we've got a link that just takes you to the home page if you need to go there directly. And then we have a couple of sections, one that helps you get to existing content, one that helps you create new content for the site, and another section which helps to maintain the menus, the two different menu systems for the site, or structures for the site. We have the main menu, and then you can change links in the footer if you need to as well. So this is the dashboard conveniently condenses many of the maintenance functional links that would otherwise be available through the administrative memory system. It just puts them all together in a more convenient way. Also, at any time, if you click on this little house up at the top, that takes you to the home page. So now, if you are editing, if you want to edit existing content, there's a couple of ways you can get to it. There's actually 3 different ways, 2 of which are very similar. One is that I can navigate to it the same way somebody would navigate who is using the site publicly. So for instance, now I've got a sample page put together which illustrates some of the layout capabilities of the site. So what I've done is I've gone to About, and I could go to About METRANS. And you notice that since I'm logged on, I get this menu at the top, tells me who I am, it gives me the ability to log out. And when I'm looking at a page of content, I have these 2 tabs, one that says View and one that says Edit. I'm in View mode right now, and if I click to Edit, what I now see is a form that's used for maintaining this content. And what we're looking at is what we call a basic page. It's the most fundamental content type for Drupal. And as the name implies, it's very basic. If I just want to create a simple, what otherwise would be a normal HTML page, with the freedom, all the freedom that comes with that in terms of layout and content, that's what this enables me to do. So the About page in this case is a very simple Drupal page, and it's maintained with what we call the WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get. And so this is the body of that page, and this is the WYSIWYG toolbar, which most of these icons are probably fairly familiar to you. We have, when you're editing, you have, actually let me go to my sample page so I can play with content that is never intended to go public. So this is my sample, I'm calling it my sample About page, but it's really intended to just illustrate different things that you can do with the WYSIWYG editor. So, you know, as you would expect, it has the ability to create text that's bold or italicized. And there are keyboard shortcuts from this that are typically used. So for instance, I'm just doing Control-I on my PC, which is the same as I would do in Word to put something in italics. And I can also underline, so I'm hitting Control-U, or I'm clicking on the U up at the top. I can strike through if I really need to. Typically not done, but it's there if you need it. You can left justify content, you can right justify content, you can center content if you need to. We'll be going over, oh, okay, and there's, you can create bullet points. This is all basic HTML, but the WYSIWYG editor, you know, applies the HTML for you automatically. So I can create a bulleted list, I can create numeric lists. So if I want to add something to that, add 4. And I want to add something to my bulleted list, yellow. I think most of this will probably be fairly familiar with you, familiar to you. So I'm just creating a new bulleted list. So all I have to do is highlight the things that I want to bullet and then add it that way. I'm going to be determined, so I'm just going to typical. So this is, it's, you know, again, this is pretty typical for this kind of content editing. So we talked about bullet points and adding numbered lists. We'll talk about creating links in a little more detail in a minute. We'll also talk about creating anchors if you need them on the page, how to insert an image. So this is superscript and subscript, which is pretty basic. So if I have a 1 here and I want a superscript, I can do that. Or a 2 here, I want to subscript that for some reason. It's probably a different example, but so that's there. Also, this right here is the into a horizontal line. So if I want to create a division between sections of content on my page, I can insert a line. Let me just save the page so we can see what it looks like. So that's where my line went in. That's it for there. Some of the other basic editing features that I want to show you is there's this feature over here, which is format, which lets you specify the size of text. So, for instance, if I wanted to create a subheader for this page, it's called Section 1, and I want to highlight it. Give it a good font size. So I'm applying what would be an HTML H2 to this, heading 2. Which when I say it looks like this. This is H2. Now, you'll notice there's a title to the page, which is actually provided, there's a special field that's provided for that. So we have a special field called title. That's where I would enter the title of the page. And that's always displayed at the top of the page in an H1 format. We'll get into this a little more as we get into the detail for how images are positioned on a page, but there's the styles drop-down that we'll use. We'll also get into these more specifically. There's something called video filter, which enables you to insert a video from, say, YouTube or Vimeo directly into your content. And there's this one on the end called embed a node, which has sort of a vague name because it can actually have many purposes, but for this particular site, it will be used to embed a slideshow, which is kind of a cool feature that we've developed for this website, which if we have time we'll get to today. If not, we'll cover it next week. So these are the basic content management, content update, and editing features. As I said, I mean, many of these are probably familiar to you, from using other text editing systems such as Word. Okay, I started to talk about the different ways to navigate to content, and as I said, one of them is simply to go to find it the way you would the way a public user would get to it. So, for instance, in this case, I've navigated my way to this particular event page, and because I've got my view and my edit tabs, I can click into edit, and I now see the form that's used to collect the input that's used to display information for an event. The other ways to navigate, if I go to the dashboard, now if I'm looking for, sometimes websites get big and there's a lot of content and you forget where things live, and so there's a couple of other ways of finding content on the site. This page called Content Management comes with Drupal, and this is listing all the different content items on the page. Content item being an item that that's of a certain content type. So, for instance, this lists all my content types. I have basic pages, news announcements, pages. There's a slideshow. Sponsors is actually a content type. I've got events. If I'm looking for content, I can do a couple of things. Now, this content management list displays content in order in which it was last edited or updated. So the fact that we were playing with the sample about page is automatically going to put it at the top of the page and put the date on it. This is when it was updated. And so I can from this page, just go right to editing that if I need to. If I really need to, I can also delete it from here, or I can view it by clicking on a link. But this page also lets me do a couple of things that make it helpful for finding content. I can sort by title. I have lots of timeline events for the searchable goods movement timeline database, as you'll see here. I can sort by type, and there's a lot of content. This may or may not be useful. Status, whether it's published or unpublished, and we'll touch base. We'll talk about how you can make things published or not published. You can sort by update, but then there's also a couple of useful filters that you can filter by content type. So it might be easier if you know you're looking for an event to say just show me all filters. All filter by event. So just show me events, and now my organized by title feature or sort by title becomes more useful. The one feature that Drupal doesn't come with, that this content list feature does not come with, that is a little frustrating, and so we have this feature that we always add to the site. Go back to the dashboard. It looks very similar. We call it the content search, and that's because it lets you search by content item, title, or description. So it's similar in layout to content management. You'll see that you'll probably use them interchangeably, but what's nice about this feature is that it lets you search for things. So if I'm looking for something with INF in the title, for instance, it immediately filters by that. It makes it a lot easier for me to find the specific content that I'm looking for. So those are the three different ways to find content on the site. You can navigate directly to it or use the content management or content search features to find what you're looking for. Okay, I actually had jumped ahead of myself a little bit when we got into showing you the WYSIWYG editor. What I want to show you is some more specific features of that, special features of that for inserting other content like images or videos. And then I want to show you, go through some specifics of entering content for events and news announcement content types. And just preliminarily, as I said, since the different content types means that they have different fields associated with them. So for instance, an event has more detail associated with it and required, such as, in this case, we have event type that you need to select. And an event, of course, is going to have a date and time associated with it. More likely than not, it will have a location and an address, and then we provide a body field. And just to contrast, a news article, or we call it news announcements item, has a different set of fields associated with it. So most content, as you see here, we associate with a specific entity center. Title is basic to any content item that's created. For news and for events, we have this, what we call the short title, and the reason we have that is because there are some places, like on the home page, where we want to restrict the amount of text here. So if something had a very long title that wrapped for many lines, we wouldn't want it. What we've done is to make things visually a little more economical on pages such as this, as we provide the ability to have a shorter title as an option. So when you see short title, that's what that's all about. But let's go back to, let's see, let me go back to my sample page and talk about how to add images to a page. So actually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete this and then I'll really add a different image, but so take out a couple of other things here. Look at this page. You may be wondering, one of the things you may be wondering is if you have the ability to actually control HTML directly, and the answer to that is yes. For instance, I'm finding it a little awkward here to try to delete this horizontal line. So what I'm going to do, if you click on this link that says Disable Rich Text, what it does is it changes the WYSIWYG editor into a direct display of HTML. And as with all things computer related, sometimes it's just easier to get right down to the code and do exactly what you want rather than having something try to do it for you automatically. So in this case, I'm getting rid of that horizontal line. And while I'm here, I'll just get rid of a few more things. And let's save that page. And I am also going to just get rid of this image because I want to show you the process for adding an image. It's always good to save things frequently, which I've done here. Okay, so now I've got a page that's just all text, and I do want to add an image to it. So it's a two-step process to add an image to a page. And one is I need to upload the image file and associate it with this content item. So my content item is a basic page called Sample About Page. It might otherwise be an event called INF Conference or an article called METRANS Awarded Grant. So what's nice about this, any page that you use for editing is it reminds you what content type you're using. And as you can see, this is just a repeat of the title that's indented down here. So I have my sample about page, which is specified here, and it knows that. Okay, so and the things that I'm showing you right now apply to all content types. So I am going to, I'm going to add a new image to this page. So the way I do that is I come down, like I said, the first step is to upload the image. I need to attach it to this content item. So I'm going to browse for a file by clicking that button, and I am going to use this picture here. So I select it on my computer, and then I click upload. So now I have a little icon here that tells me, that I've done what I wanted to do, which is to upload the image and associate it with the content. But then I have to go in and tell it where I want that picture to appear. And that in itself is sort of a two-step process. You notice down here where it says file URL, this is an important piece of information that I need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that and copy it. And the reason I do that is because then I need to insert up here. I'm going to specify where I want my image to appear. And the way I do that is I go to the beginning of the paragraph that I want it to be a part of. In this case, I want it to appear either to the left or the right of my, this title or this piece of text in section 1. So I put my cursor there, and then I go up here and I click on the image icon in the WYSIWYG toolbar. And where it says URL, I'm going to just paste in the path name and file name that I copied from down below. Now I don't really have to do much else than that, but I do want to show you one thing. When I click OK, I get this message here that says all text is missing. And what that's telling me is that I have to enter something here in order to save this. Now the reason that's a requirement is because this site, METRANS.org, is intended to be what we call Section 508 compliant. And what that means is that it provides basic usability or readability to people who are visually impaired. And more specifically, what that means is that people who use screen readers, so if I were blind or visually impaired, I might be using a screen reader, which is basically reading all the content off of the page for me. And when it comes to an image, since there's nothing to read per se with an image, what alternative text does is it provides some text for the screen reader to read to me, so I am not missing any content. So I'm going to just add an alternative text here called container ships. And the screen reader will say, image of container ships. And now it's happy to accept that. So I'm going to save the page again. Now there's my image, but it's not really the layout I had in mind. So I'm going to go in, and that's just to show you that you need to do another step relative to layout. I'm highlighting my image by clicking on it. If you use a different browser, this may not look the same. I'm using Firefox, and in Google, in Chrome, what I notice is that it turns the entire image blue. So it doesn't look the same. You may notice differences if you use a different browser. But so I've got the image highlighted, and now I'm going to go up to Styles, and I'm going to say I want you to appear on the right side of the screen. So I select my image right, and I save it. And now that looks more like what I had in mind. So just for the heck of it, I wonder what it looks like if I put it on the left. And the answer is, well, it does what it's supposed to do, but I don't like it as much, so I'm going to put it back on the right. As I'm doing this, I want to show you another feature with images, which is you provide the ability to add a caption to the image. So you notice that there is no caption to it now, but if I click on the image and highlight it again, and then I go back to the image icon in the WYSIWYG toolbar, and I click on that, I click on Advanced, and there's this thing called Long Description URL, which is technically something else, and it's not frequently used. So what we're doing is using that to enable text entry for a caption. So I am going to do this caption, container ships, enter Florida to Los Angeles. And I'm going to save that. And I'm going to save my page. And so there's my caption under the image. So I'm looking at that again. I may want to tighten that up visually. So that's how you can work with images. One thing that I didn't point out is that sometimes you'll upload an image and it'll be very large. When you can drag and drop the corners of an image to make it smaller if you need to. So if I really want this to be smaller, I can do that. I can drag and drop it to make it smaller. Or another thing I can do is if I click on the image and I go back to the image icon on the toolbar, I can specify a size to the image here. So maybe I really don't want 298. I want it to be a little smaller. I'm going to make it 200. And it maintains the proportion, so the height automatically changes. The number for the height automatically changes and makes it smaller for me. So I have that flexibility. So I think that pretty much covers it for images. Okay, what I want to show you next is how to, I might want to add a file to this, such as a PDF, and I might want to create a link to another site. So I'll show you how to do those two things. Let's say I want to attach the file to this, a PDF. If I scroll down, and so there's a special section, a set of fields called File Attachment. I click Browse, look for the file that I want to attach. I have a PDF here that I want to attach to the node. When I say node, by the way, that means that's a synonym for content item. And I'll upload that. Now, similar to image, what the content management system has done is it's giving me a link to that file, which I can subsequently embed in my content up above. So let's say I want to put it, well, let's say I want to link it to some existing text. I can either create new text to which I want it to link. So or I can, and then I would just highlight that text. Or of course I can highlight existing text. The point is that as soon as I have my text highlighted that I want to link to my file, I go up to the top and there's this globe and chain, which means link, and I click on that, and I paste my URL in here. Now, one of the things that I want to do is oops. Yes, usually does this automatically, but what I want to do is make sure that I changed what's called protocol. I don't want it to say HTTP because what that's going to do is it's going to put these two things together and assume that this file lives outside the site. But in this case, I want to change it to other, which means that it doesn't. It's just going to assume that it lives on the site, that it's attached to the Drupal site. So I'm going to click OK. And click Save. And so here's my link, which links to my PDF, which is just a test document. Now, similarly, if I wanted to add a link to a page or to another website someplace, I could type in text that I want to link, and I would just go right to my link button and say I want to go to and save that. Click on that. I'm going to right click and open it in a different tab. So those are basic content editing functions for adding images and adding a file to a page. I do want to show you a couple of special features that are built into Drupal. A lot of times you're going to be copying content from someplace else. And oftentimes that content comes from a Word document, and you probably know from experience that copying from a Word document doesn't give you the most satisfactory results. And that's because when you copy from a Word document, it brings transparently, the cut and paste process brings a lot of background code from the Word document that isn't particularly, or oftentimes is just incompatible with what you're trying to do with your HTML page. So there's a special feature that helps you to work with Word files. Let me bring up this is the document we're working with. So this is my Word document for the training outline. And what I'm going to do is just highlight some of this text and say I want to copy this and put it in my web page. So I'm doing highlight and then copy, get rid of that. Actually, let me just open a new page to make this a little clearer. Actually, we haven't touched on this, but so creating a new page, I'm going to go to my dashboard, and I'm going to say create new content items. I'm creating a basic page, and I'm going to give it a name. And now I want to copy my Word content in here. Now I'm just going to do it. I'm just doing a paste. It kind of looks okay, but what I'm going to do just to check things out is I'm going to disable rich text, which means look at it in HTML. Oh, it's actually working just fine. I think we made it by default. Oops. What we did is we set up the editor so that it automatically checks to see if you're pasting from Word. If you find that things aren't working properly, you can be more specific with it and say, I want to paste from Word. I have this button up here. If I click it, okay, the button is called Paste from Word. So I click on that, and it gives me a little dialog box into which I put my content. And if it were a more complicated document, which this one is not, it would make a point of stripping out all of the extraneous Word code, with all the extraneous code that Word puts in the background.
Does that work with Excel?
I haven't tried it with Excel. It's specific to Word. But let me show you another feature for copying content in. Okay, so I copied that. It's not exactly perfect. So I'm going to do it the way I do it for the editing. This is where if you do know with HTML, it's helpful. So that looks a little better. Extra space here that I want to get rid of, so I'll get rid of it. So seldom perfect, but it typically will bring in basic formatting such as bold, italic, underline, but it'll strip out the more complicated background code that tends to come with Word and often messes up websites. You were asking about Excel, but I don't know of a way to paste directly from Excel, but what I can show you, and I'm going to add this as a sample page. Hopefully the sample page will provide examples as we go in the future. Of course, when the site goes live, we'll take the sample page off of the menu, but we can leave it in the system so that if you want to find it and look to see how something was done with it, you can do that for reference. What I do want to show you is, let's see, I think this may speak to what you're thinking. This is an example of a page that is created with a table. And as I'm looking at it, I'm wondering why the top isn't. The top is supposed to be a darker gray. Just look. Oh, that's okay. This is the typical table. This is how a table should appear by default in the site, which is that it would have the header would be in the darker gray and the body would be in the lighter gray, and it has the white lines through it. What I will do after this session is over, I will put up a sample of this so that you can see it. And let me just show you what it would look like as if I was editing it. This is another case where, and you're probably familiar with doing this by working with Dreamweaver, but with tables, oftentimes it's with Drupal, it's easier to just drop down and do direct coding for your table, as you know how with your table rows and your table data cells. This is all pretty much straightforward table stuff, but what I've done is I've included, and this again, I think this is you do this in Dreamweaver. You have this class called control table, which basically is telling it what style. This tells it the style to apply to the table, which is what we just saw, the dark gray header and the light gray background below and the white lines that define each cell. One of the things I do want to tell you, this is sort of advanced stuff right now. I'll cover this again in the next training, but let me just back up a second here and show you something on this page. One of the things about this site that I haven't really talked about is the fact that it's responsive, and what we mean is that the design of it responds in such a way that it changes its layout to be more appropriate for things like a tablet or a mobile phone. So this page, for instance, is an example. All I have to do is resize my browser to illustrate this. So what we're looking at is what we call the extended desktop. So if you have a large screen, as I do, this is how the website will appear. But if I have a smaller screen, as I make my browser smaller, suddenly it understands that it has less room to display, so it's condensing itself a little bit and making things just a little tighter. And if I keep making my screen smaller, it drops down. I think I fixed that. It's not like wrapping properly. This is what we call the tablet width. So if I were on a tablet, this is what this screen would look like. And again, we've specifically made it understand that it's being displayed on a smaller device, and so that the layout adapts itself to that more narrow browser width. And then one more level down, if I keep going, what happens if I was going to look at this on a mobile phone? Well, what actually happens is it really changes layout. I get a different, more compact header to the site. I have a menu system. The menu system sort of changes, but it's the same menu system. It just is in a more user-friendly way for a mobile phone, and I can navigate to the same pages, some of which we've looked at, including, let's see, where I just came from, which is research projects. So this is the content page we're just looking at that's created with the table. And what I want to point out about tables relative, and again, we'll touch base on this again next week, is that when you're working with tables, you want to be very careful, because it's responsive, always to, when you talk about widths, always talk about percentages instead of set pixel widths, because when the table gets displayed on a more narrow screen, it needs to know relative sizes rather than specific sizes. If that makes any sense. Again, we'll cover that in more detail next week. But I did want to just touch base on that. And what I will do is create a sample page of the table, so then you can subsequently go to it and copy the code to reuse as you need it on other tables. Okay, that was sort of a tangent. Let's see. Okay, we talked about paste for more. We talked about, oh, okay. The other editing feature I want to show you. Let me go back to my sample page. There's another button I want to show you. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but sometimes when you're trying to cut and paste from somewhere into a web page, again, you end up with the issue of like a whole bunch of code. Maybe I'm trying to copy and paste things from another web page, and when I paste it into my website, it comes with a whole bunch of HTML code that's not appropriate and screws up my layout. And you may find that if you're using Microsoft, if you're using Windows, you may be in the habit of, in that instance, of pasting things into Notepad, which completely strips out any HTML that might be coming in the background and just gives you like plain old text with no formatting on it whatsoever, which may, not be the easiest solution, but may not be provide the most direct results that you want, but it ends up being the solution that's easiest to work with by simply getting rid of all the stuff that you didn't want and giving you the basic text that enables you to subsequently format it the way you'd like to. And let me just give you another example. So if I take this block of text from my document and copy it, so there's this little icon here. It's called Paste as Plain Text. And if I don't know what kind of computers you guys use, but if it was on a Mac, I would probably be pasting into the text edit program to strip out all the HTML code. On a Windows machine, I would paste it into Notepad first, which would strip out all the HTML. What this does is it kind of lets me skip that step by doing it for me, so I'm pasting it into the Paste as Plain Text box feature. Clicking OK. And it's doing exactly what I told it to, what it should do, which is to get rid of all this formatting, get rid of all the formatting that came from this document, which in this particular instance may not be the best solution. But if I'm coming from an HTML page, let me see if I can find a better example. Let me just take something, say, from the existing site. And if I try to paste it in, it's not the format. It's not the same format. It may be something that's workable, but it's not the same format. So in this instance, what I want to do is I just want to paste in, I just want to get the basic text in there so that I can play with it. And so what it's done is it's stripped out all of the bold, all of the table code, and any bullet points or numbers, and just give me plain old text, which then I can kind of start from scratch and say, well, this is how I really want it to appear. And so I can apply my own original formatting to it. Okay, so those are the basics of text editing. What I want to show you is, and we've worked with, as I said, the basic page, which is the most basic content type that you should be working with. What I want to show you is how to enter an event or a news item, which use many of the same, well, I mean, for text editing, it uses all of the same features. But there are some specifics about these two content types that you'll want to know about and certainly will become familiar with. So let's say I am going to add, I need to add a news article. So I come to my dashboard and I say I want to create a news announcement. Now, everything is going to be associated with or can be associated with one of the entity centers. In this case, I have an article that's going to have something to do with Metro Freight. So I want to make sure. Now I'm going to select this because I want this article to appear within the Metro Freight section of the website. So that's how I make that happen, is by selecting Metro Freight here. So let me go to my sample content here. And so this is my sample content. The title of my article is INF Featured Speakers. And I do need to enter a short title. Now in this instance, this is not a long title, so I'm not worried about it. I'm going to just enter the same title. If this were a very long title, I would want to enter the short title. And short title, as this indicates, is a maximum of 60 characters. So I know that on the existing site, some of the titles for events or announcements get very long. And as I said, we want to keep things clean on the home page and the landing page, so we provide this short title, which we display in those places. On the full page for the article, though, it will use the full title. Let's see. So here's my article. Just copying and pasting text here. I'm going to paste from Word because I know it's coming from Word. That very nicely brings across the italics and the bold that have been applied to the Word document. And we just save this because it's always good to save things frequently. So that's what my article is looking like so far. Go back into edit mode. What's missing here? Oh, okay. So I want to put a link on this to the INF website. Now, there's actually, what we've done is, because there's two different ways of doing this. There's one that I showed you. We can, I could create this text in my document and create a link to it. This way. But one of the things we've anticipated is that on the current site, there are a number of, there's a lot of content, news and event content, that also have, let's see, let me find a good example, built-in links to other pages. Okay, so here's an example. If you're used to working with UI Published, you'll remember that there are special fields that are used that enable you to create a link like this. There's two fields. One's called, I think it's called link label, and the other one's called link URL. We didn't want to lose that content, so when we transfer that information over to Drupal, we had to create similar fields so that content we transfer over still displays in the same way. So that feature is actually still available in the Drupal system. So we have the other content URL and the link title. So I can show you the two different ways. So in this instance, this is a different way of inserting my link. I'm going to say, here's my link title. On the website. And here's my URL to that. I'm going to save it. Now, see, just to compare and contrast, this is the link that I input manually, and this is the input. This is the link that I use those two fields for, so that it would do the same thing as the current site. So, for instance, when this event gets transferred to the new site, which it has already been, actually, May 14th, it may not have been. This information is still good. So, in other words, the formatting on the existing site, or the content for the existing site and the way it's input is supported on the new site. So again, it's just two different ways of doing the same thing. Providing a link on your page to another place or a document that you'd like to associate it with. So that's, let me save this again and just show you that because I selected it for Metro Freight, all goes well. Well, I've used the same example a couple of times, so it's on here twice now. But this is the one we just entered, and it's because the news and announcement, it's because I entered it today, it's displaying today's date for it. And this is showing yesterday's date because as I was preparing for this, I was using the same example. I can go in and get rid of this one really easily by clicking on it, say edit, and I can come down here and say, okay, just delete, get rid of that because it's in there twice. So now I can come back to my Metro Freight page. That's gone, and this is all. There's a lot of sample content on here, but as you can see, I was able to get rid of my duplicate entry really easily. I want to touch base. I want to show you how to enter an event now. Similar in most ways, it just has a lot more content associated with it. So I'm going to go to my dashboard, and I'm going to say create new content event. Again, an event is typically associated with one of the entity centers. An event can be of a couple of different types. It can be a regular event, which is just generic. It can be a conference, workshop, point, counterpoint. I believe we're still supporting. It might be a seminar, town hall, or a webinar. And let's see, where's my sample content for that? Okay, so this is some sample content I prepared for my event. And so the name of this event is Upcoming CIT Industry Town Hall, which is very long and may not fit really nicely in one of the lists on the homepage or the METRANS UTC landing page. So I'm going to give it a short title, which is not that. And I have the ability to create a subtitle if I like. And it's optional. An event, of course, has a date, so let's make this May 15th. Let's say it's going to start at 1 p.m. It's Cal State Long Beach. I got my address. Long Beach. Now what you should know as I'm typing this in is that I really do want to get my address and my zip code correct, because what we do is we also, with that information, we automatically generate a Google map within the display of the content, which is kind of cool. So this is my pretend content for the text. And I could add an image or a file attachment. Let's skip that for now. This also has the ability to add that special link that we looked at on the news announcements content type. Again, because that feature exists on the current website, so we want to make sure we get all that information over here and display it as it's intended. So this is optional. Tags. I'm going to skip tags for now. We'll come back to that later. So I'm going to save my news article. And my event, I'm sorry. Some cleanup. I need to get rid of these because they don't have that content. But as you can see, this is the, let me actually log out here. Go to Metro Freight. No, it was METRANS. So here's the event I just added, and it's showing up in METRANS UTC because I told it to do that. I've got to tweak this formatting a little bit, but as you can see, there's my title, and this is the event detail. Here's the location information and the Google map, and what links I got to clean up. If I wanted to add an image, I could do that. One of the things I want to show you, let me add an image to this because it's okay, but I want to show you. I logged out, so I can log back in. The image for a news item or an event item is actually used in two ways. Actually, let me show you. So you notice that there's a link here for all news. I mean, it says all news. It should say all events because we have news block up here and events down here, so this should be all events. It does link to all events as it should for this entity center. And what I wanted to show you is that in this instance, I have an image appearing on the right side. So this is optional, but it's a nice feature. I notice on the current site there's not a lot of images, but if you choose to include an image in your event or your news item, this is an instance where actually it doesn't work so well in the content. This is an event for the National Center, and I've uploaded a file here, an image to this event. And actually, I'm going to take it out of the content because it doesn't work well there. But the fact that I have uploaded this image means that the system will take that image and display it on the right side of the list of events for the National Center in this case. Oops. Okay. So this is what the system automatically does with the image that's uploaded. Again, it's optional. As you can see, not all of these items have images, so that's why they don't all have one to display. But it's a nice feature. It makes the site more appropriate to add images as you can and as you'd like. And they're automatically supported in this way if you choose to use them. Let's go back to, I think we covered event pretty much. This is my event. This is how it would be displayed in the list, and this is the detail that would appear. And as you know, we talked about, it has different ways of including attachments or links to other sites. Let's see. So we talked about events, and we talked about news and announcements. Oh, okay. What I want to show you is how to add a new page to the menu system. So let's say let's say I've created a new page. I'm just going to start from scratch. I'm going to go to my dashboard, and I want this to appear under, let's say, the About section. So I'm going to create a basic page, and I'm going to paste in the content that I need for the page. I'm not going to get too fancy here. This is a basic page with some basic content on it. Of course, I would add images or tables as I needed to. Now, something I want to show you is that I gave the page the title of New Test Page, and what Drupal has done is it's automatically given it a URL based on that name. So what I want to do is I want to make this page, I want to add a menu item for this page to the menu. And in order to do that, I can scroll down to the bottom of the editing page for this and click Provide a Menu Link. And that gives me some additional information, including menu link title, so the name that will appear in the link within the menu. And then it also asks me where I'd like to put it within the menuing system. So this is illustrating the different sections of the website. So we have the About section, METRANS, UTC, Metro Freight, National Center, etc., and the different pages that currently have been assigned under each of those sections of the website. And as I said, I'm just going to put this under the About section. So I'm going to click on About, and I'm going to save it. As you can see, it did that for me automatically. So now I've got under the About section, I've got my sample, I've got About METRANS, and I've got my key personnel, and I have this great new page that I created called New Test Page. Sometimes you'll notice that it doesn't get put exactly where you want it to in this list. So, and I've documented this. What you can do, again, go to the dashboard, you can go to the main menu, and this gives me a full list of outline of my menu system. And if I decide, for instance, I really want this page not to appear under sample About page, but I really want it to appear above News, I can drag and drop it and save it. And it will have moved it within the menuing system for me. Okay, so that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. I know we kind of jumped around a little bit. I think the documentation is presented in a pretty straightforward, step-by-step manner, so I hope that's useful to you. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So next week we'll be talking about, we'll cover the topic of how to add a slideshow, how to create a slideshow and add it to content. And we'll also be talking about how to manage content for research projects and associated researchers. That component hasn't been developed. I gave you a preview of that, but we haven't developed it yet. Well, I mean, I should say it's in development, but it's not ready for prime time. So, yeah, those are two additional important components to the site we'll be showing you next week. And if Tom O'Brien is joining us, we'll show you how to add an item to the Searchable Goods Movement timeline database. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, I guess I'll encourage you to go through Vicki so she can consolidate questions and forward feedback to me as necessary. But if nobody has any other questions, I want to thank you all for participating. And we're scheduled for the same time next week to continue Drupal training content management system part 2. So I look forward to meeting with you all again online next week.